the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing installation unit of the Kaiser family. Please let's make welcome Jamila Mohammed Fanini. Thank you very much. She'll be joining this conversation around construction across Africa that focuses on innovations learned from the pandemic. Thank you very much. We are delighted to have you here, ma'am. Thank you. I think she has some delegates in one corner there because her own applause was different, but okay. Joining as well this conversation, we have Greg Troy. He's a director and professional architect at Sauta. He'll be joining virtually. Please bring him up screen. Thank you very much. And finally, last but definitely not the least, to join this conversation is the director, James Cubitt Facility Managers and James Cubitt Resources, Mr. Jotun Karu. He'll be joining this conversation on stage now. A round of applause for him. Let's not be stingy with the applause. We're not paying for it. It's free. It's free. Thank you very much. I'll now be handing over to our able moderator to take the conversation on from here. Over to you, Akimali. Thank you.
From secondary school, and we are doing some real estate in Abuja, not Lagos. So we're based in Abuja. I think that's basically what I am. I went to ABU and a couple of other schools. I'm here right now. Thank you. All right. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for that personal touch. Okay, on to you, sir. Something that is in your CV and your LinkedIn profile.
I'm a graduate of accounting, but somehow, something you go to school and somehow you forget about those childhood dreams. But somehow, circumstance I fell into real estate. I've been there for close to 15 years in the industry, from the banking to development to business resource. I think the challenge is having there's practically nothing professionally that I don't have on my LinkedIn profile. But apart from that, it's good an opportunity to be here. I was here not as a panelist last year, and it's good to see fantastic things that REDA is doing. We're looking forward to REDA 2023. Thank you.
I like designing. I also like playing chess and playing the acoustic guitar. So those are what I think I do when I'm afraid. So we'll go with the first question. We'll be for Jamila. What new construction management challenges have surfaced in the past 20 years since COVID-19?
Came in when Mr. Ayoteriba was speaking. I think that he spoke about quite a number of challenges that we're currently experiencing. And I would say that those challenges, some are actually tailored to the construction industry, but some are basically, it's what's happening around the world. So post COVID-19, there are quite a number of major challenges that we have experienced in the industry, and I'll say that we are currently, I'm going to take them off, of course. We're currently putting things in place to ensure that as best as we can, we are trying to overcome them. Nigeria is definitely not an easy place to work in the first instance, not an easy place to do business, any kind of business in the first instance. So definitely some of these things have to be looked at from a very, very critical point of view. The very first thing that I will say is the issue of forex devaluation. Nigeria is currently in a situation where we cannot predict next week. In construction right now, we've had jump of material, sale of material between January and August. That is, and I'm not exaggerating this, at least 20% jump between January and now, and some over 100%. We know what diesel is to logistics in construction. When you have a mechanized project, you have a mechanized setup, you know how we have to run diesel. So that alone is threatening to cripple construction, because if we do not find ways, and when I say ways, I'm talking about really strategic ways to combat those kind of that kind of situation, then there's construction companies will be closing down. Real estate will be going down because I'm just waiting to see what the end will be on that particular situation. So that's just one example of how the devaluation of the naira has affected construction. Yeah, we are all here. We did not start the war in Russia and Ukraine, but it is affecting us in almost every part of our lives. Construction, of course, it's not insulated from the effect of all of that. Non-availability of materials, where we normally would get materials from open forex-dependent materials, the same way that the devaluation of naira has happened, the same way that the forex is also affecting the cost of material, because what you would get, they'll tell you, sorry, we can only give you this material based on a dollar exchange rate of such and such amount up to 3 days validity. Right now, in our company, we don't even accept fluctuating contracts anymore. I'm sorry, we don't accept non-fluctuating contracts anymore, because we cannot predict what is going to happen in the next 2 weeks. Anything that any switch in the economy, it comes back to us as in various ways. And I don't even want to begin to talk about the elephant in the room, which is the big resignation. Yes, to be honest, it's true. So there are a lot of human capital, because we talked about human capital a lot during the first plenary session. We are having a very high attrition rate right now, and we're looking for, sometimes we even have the work, we have the project, there's real estate, because construction fits into real estate, and we don't even have the proper qualified people to actually get this work done. So these are just some of the issues that are affecting the construction industry in a very big way. Thank you very much.
Various of us here, we've kind of experienced these challenges in the last 8-10 months in our respective businesses. And it's our hope that by the end of this discussion, we'll be able to find new ways to how we can reduce these challenges and manage them respectively. So our next question will be to you, sir. What exactly does innovation in construction mean? Does it mean the adoption of new types of materials, or we think of new design solutions? Innovation in.
Okay, I think providing necessary clarity about that is defining what innovation is by itself. Innovation is just a practical application of an idea to produce, to come up with a product or a service, a process or a procedure. So innovation itself goes way beyond just product. So it's a service, it's a process, it's a procedure. And obviously, construction encapsulates these 4 legs of product, service, process, procedures. So obviously, innovation exists in construction, and specifically, we've seen in recent times innovations like as far as PropTech. PropTech is something that's an innovation in Nigeria. You see, we have digital platforms where properties are listed. So rather than you want to rent a house in Harlem, you don't have to call an agent, or you have to go on various of these listings and find out a very good price of what prices are in areas. Disruptive innovations are the things that are game changers. Comes into the system and creates an entirely new market, an entirely new industry. For example, GSM was disruptive, came and created new sets of products, new sets of services. There are people on the streets now, if you tell them NITEL, they've never heard what NITEL is. They don't know what NITEL is. Because practically, it came and just cleared out competition out of the system. And we have substantive innovations, which are basically people building on people's existing needs. So most of the time in the construction industry, what we have now is substantive innovation, where people have identified needs, their existing products, and people are improving on those products. So listings have always happened. We've always had hard copy listings, listing in papers, listing in magazines, but we've digitized it. PropTech is something new. maybe we'll see how it goes, whether it becomes something disruptive. I would feel an innovation is something Lagos State has recently done regarding the Lagos State Real Estate Authority, Registration Authority, where they're trying to ensure that practitioners in the industry are registered based on the fallout of the building collapse in Kogi. That's an innovation because now you have agents who have to be registered, and you have developers who have to be registered, you have investors who have to be registered, foreign investors who have to be registered. The advantage of that is that that registration is a second level of cross-check to ensure that somebody who you're dealing with is somebody that has a track record, somebody that can be verified, somebody that you can get their details if the transaction goes wrong. And there are transactions now that, based on this new act, it's not really a new act because it was just repealing the act of 2015, but they brought in new things. So innovation is comprehensive. Pandemic brought one or two innovations, like the way contracts will be drafted will be slightly different now because the fact of force majeure, where people are acts of God crisis, the way lawyers will look at that, the detail that we, because what we have is force majeure in most contracts now. I just placeholders, it's cut and paste, they just keep repeating. But now, people will actually pay attention to that. So the industry may not have the program of an innovative industry like the financial sector or the internet sector, digital sector, but it's like a big elephant that turns around quite slowly, but it gets to turn around. And the industry has been turning around. Now, we will get the kind of rapid change that we're having in other industries. Maybe not. And I always say this, the reason why the industry is not as innovative is because somehow there are a lot of issues around it. One, a lot of times with real estate, with construction, it's big ticket transactions, so you can't be flippant about it. Two, a lot of times in construction, lives are involved. If things go wrong with technology that has not been well tested, maybe building practices that have not been well tested, lives can be lost. So there has to be a sense of caution. And usually when you're taking caution, there's time lapse. But definitely we're in an industry that is quite innovative. New innovations have come into the country. Maybe we may not have seen as much innovation with maybe construction materials, which is a challenge we're having. But it depends. There are innovations. The problem is that are we willing to exert ourselves to bring those innovations in? For example, dry stacking. Dry stacking is a technology where rather than joining block to block with a cement mortar, you can actually just stack and lock in. Right? It saves you a whole lot of cement, where it will take a standard good mason in an hour, maybe a day to do 100 blocks. With dry stacking, you can do 300, 400 blocks. Fine. But the question is that are artisans, are masons trained to do dry stacking? And are we willing to train artisans with the risk that you train them and they go to your competition and they start to work for them? So innovation from construction perspective, construction processes, construction material is slow, but it exists. Obviously, you are an architect. I assume there is always the BMIs, where people now can actually do walkthroughs and can actually see various levels of construction and what is happening there. So innovation is existing. It's not only existing all over the world in construction, but it's also existing in Nigeria. Maybe Nigeria may not be at the tip of the sword, but definitely we're there and we'll definitely get there.
Thank you very much, sir. I think what I could get from that is innovation. That's the key word from what Active Bottom has given us, is innovation. And innovation means creative ways of doing. So I would, knowing that, I'll go on to the next question before Jamilia here. Oh, Greg is online. Oh, wow. Can you hear me, Greg?
Yes, I can. Hi, everyone.
It's technology. Yeah, I think everyone can hear you. So can you just give us a brief introduction about yourself?
All right, so I'm Greg True, and I'm a director of Sayota we're based in Cape Town. We have a combined company, I think, of about 300 people now in Sayota, which is architecture, art, which is English. And we work, I think, in about 80 countries at the moment. So we've got a unique kind of perspective on what's going on in the whole kind of world as it is. And it's been a very interesting time for us. You know, we're very proud African export. We working from home and the whole COVID situation has had a very profound effect and a very positive effect on the way that we work. Yeah, that probably sums me up.
Did you say working from home?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
how has that been for you?
We've just, well, you know, because we work remotely so much, remote working has kind of always been part of our DNA. So the transition to working from home has been quite easy. You know, we also adopted some technology like Teams and Zoom and BIM 360 to support our Revit and our Revit infrastructure. So the transition wasn't difficult at all. What we've also found is through the technology we're able to engage with more people, both outside of our organization and inside of our organization. So, for instance, we can now run design sessions in the team where you can get 60, 70, 80 people into a session to discuss work that's been done internally. You know, and at the office you can practically get 5, 6, 7 people into a space. So we've completely rethought the office as a resource where I think on a busy day there might be 20 people in the office now, and people kind of come and go. We use it for presentations. We're going to start using it more for internal social events. And we've converted big parts of it into other things. For instance, we've got a whole materials kind of research group now and library, and they've taken over probably about 30% of the floor space. So yeah, I think the office space is still very valuable for us, but it's become just more of a resource, and it's not a working resource. It's also, the other thing working from home has done is it's allowed us to retain people.
It borders around climate change and decarbonization. Yeah. So, is it forcing us to innovate? That's the decarbonization, climate change. Is it forcing us as architects and designers and real estate individuals to innovate?
It is going to force us. You know, I think we've certainly seen a growing foot, and we certainly in our practice are starting to think quite carefully about it. And that was one of the reasons we set up this research unit, because we know that if we don't change, as a company working internationally, we're simply going to lose our market. You know, we have to build differently and more responsibly. And that I think, you know, for African countries, that's quite difficult, because one of the key things for decarbonisation is being able to source materials locally. You know, the moment you put something on a ship and import it from halfway around the planet, you've almost immediately lost the battle with trying to figure out how to decarbonise effectively. So it is a big issue. We're trying to respond to it in different ways. So one of which is trying to understand how to use passive energy principle is more. You know, in other words, reduce our building's reliance on electricity. So that means natural daylighting. It means using properly engineered systems, for instance, to use air conditioning in a very limited way, combined ventilation and allow actually air temperatures to be higher in spaces. We've got some very good engineers in Cape Town that we're working with and looking at material evaluation, solar power, all sorts of alternative power solutions. So that's a big deal. And of course, alternative materials. And one of the things that's just happened in Cape Town is there's a developer who's just completing a 12-story building using hempcrete as blocks. In other words, a plant-based material to make blocks out of. That's a very big innovation, getting away from cement, and the use of so much cement in concrete is a huge issue. We're also looking at, we've been invited to take part in a project called Lifetime House, which is a Swedish guy who's trying to create the house version of a Tesla car. And he's been sharing some of the technology with us, and that's quite interesting. For instance, one of the ideas around water is a kind of a self-circulating shower system. And there's a company called Orbital Systems that actually developed this for NASA. And the idea is that as the water comes through out of the shower at a high rate of flow, it gets picked up by the drainage system and immediately runs through a filtration system, which delivers it back to the shower head. So each shower potentially will save about 90,000 litres a year. So there are quite big shifts coming in materials, technology, systems, etc. This sort of house project is also going to be designed to be energy positive, so it produces more energy than it uses. And in many places, one's now able to sell that energy back to the state. That's about to happen in South Africa.
Are we ready for it? If we are, what are the new applications that we could do now, maybe in the short term and in long term?
Thank you, Aki, for that. I'm not even sure if the question is about whether we are ready or not. The question is, the fact is we don't even have much of a choice. When it comes to moving with the times and moving with technology and digitization. Of course, the COVID-19 kind of spurred us into that space where we had to take up technology to be able to move on with life. I'm sure that everyone here, or at least almost everyone, immediately the lockdown happened, everyone was looking for alternative ways to get supplies to their homes, to ensure that business is not stagnant, just not wasting away. So we don't even have a choice. So that period of lockdown in Nigeria, of course, was just a typical spur to action on digitization, and that's the same way that it has also transcended to the construction sector. From my perspective, we had actually even locked down before the lockdown happened. So by the time lockdown happened, when it was formally announced, we were already way ahead on Teams meetings and all of that, because we were not having the opportunity to do the physical work on site, but there was still so much more to do. So we had to, sit down, schedule meetings, do what we have the right discussions, still look at the finances, because that's also really important. We needed to know how we're going to respond to the situation, and most especially how we're going to ensure that the human capital, the employees of the businesses, were not just left to their own devices. We had to follow up on them, call them, find out how they are doing, how their family was doing, because that was really part of what helped these people till we returned from the lockdown. So there was not much of a choice, at that time. Now post-COVID, Nigeria, for some special reason, had been crawling. That's the Nigerian construction industry, had been crawling on adoption of digital ways of construction. He was talking about, I think even Dr. spoke about BIM and I also heard Greg talk about it. So somehow, we had not yet, for obvious reasons, yes, expensive in the short run. I mean, the short term, it's you need to go for training, you need to do this, but everybody has moved on. All the countries, all the economies have moved on, and Nigeria is being left behind on that. But suddenly we're doing our construction in the cloud. We're learning Revit. We're building models. We're doing our crash detections just to ensure that when we finally get to site, everything is ready, and we're only doing this work once. Unlike before, where the conceptualization of a design is, if you call 10 people and give them a 2D drawing, you have 10 different interpretations. But when you're working with models, you're able to have the same output, and everyone is ready and expecting the same thing on site. And I think that has actually moved really fast. I would even say on the contractor side, which is where we are, it has been exceptionally slow rather than with designers. So with designers, you find a situation where all the modeling had been done, all the crash detection had been done, everything had been done, but when they're passing the drawings to the contractors, they're passing 2D drawings. So it's like moving 2 steps forward and then 3 steps back, as far as we're concerned. So one of the things that we are doing is to ensure that we're championing, at least on the contractor side, we're championing that endeavor, and even we find ourselves right now where we're having design and build situations, and we are those that are introducing this to some of the designers that we are working with. Because at the end of the day, it actually helps everyone. It does not only help everyone, it actually puts more money in our pocket. I'm sorry, I'm a contractor, we like money. So, yeah, and seriously, you find situations, lots of situations where you're redoing the work, or virtual reality gets your client to actually see and feel the project before it is even built. So before they come to you to make a change, they will have a long thought about it, because they understand what it is that is happening. Before they say, no, I don't want this wall, move it there. And there's all the implications of moving that wall. It's not, passed to them at that point, but when the implications start coming, it's either they don't want to do it, or they've changed their mind, or they're not going to pay for it. So, this kind of digitalization is actually changing construction in such ways. Another way, cement, stockpile of chippings, stockpiling of building materials on the site, littered all over. But now, nobody even wants to keep that, because as you are stockpiling, there's someone else on the other side, siphoning. So you have your wall standing, and the formwork comes to you, the scaffolding comes to you, so that you are kind of declustering yourself as a contractor and ensuring that your real work, of course, we can't run away from. For everything that we do, for every activity that we do as construction people, as real estate people, we are depleting the environment. And one day we'll come back and there's no environment left for us. We all know what's happening in Port Harcourt, and we know what they're trying to do right now. I mean, we can't have this kind of chair in Port Harcourt, because you'll come back and it's all filled with soot. Of energy, we're trying to optimize use of energy, optimize use of embedded energy materials, optimizing the use of water, and maximizing all the natural resources that we have. It's not an option. It is actually not an option. So when we're thinking about the green certification, we say, oh, it's going to cost some money, it's going to... Please, we need to dispel that idea. Alpha was talking about, EDGE, which is the platform for, economies like ours. That's evolving economies. Yes, so let's all try and get ourselves educated on it. Let's get the knowledge. Let's apply it in everything that we do, because real estate is changing the property of the environment. So we need to do something.
One thing that stood out from what you just said is digitization. That's the phrase that I could pick from that. How important it is for us as individuals to adopt digital framework into the processes that we do. Hope to balance cost efficiency versus innovation. The question here is it costly to innovate in Africa?
I think we can supply chain disruption. The first thing is, and I think it starts with the planners and the designers, is then understanding and coming to grasp with that reality. and building that reality in their planning and in their designing from onset. So you try and understand the materials that are going to have the challenges. You are going to create a risk analysis about these materials, and based on your risk analysis about all the materials that have the tendency to be disrupted in supply timelines and supply costs, are going to have good alternatives. You need to do that. You can't put the kind of glass there that you know that there's a tendency that by the time it moves from China, it's going to take 3 months rather than 3 weeks to land in Nigeria. Do you understand? So reality has to be there. So those options have to be there. The other option there where it's also with the planning, well, this will be more with the technology side of things, is the fact that we have to begin to look at local alternatives. But you must understand that, yes, the question talks about disruption in global supply chain, but there is also disruption in local supply chain. We realized the situations where we had in recent times where there was fuel scarcity, but it wasn't the fact that there was no fuel at Papa. The challenge was that the diesel to fund the trucks who were bringing those fuel to the filling stations had problems. So it was a supply chain problem. It wasn't that the product wasn't there. It was that the channel moving the product to the consumer, there was a problem there. So people have to understand the reason for things, and the things that are, well, insecurity will definitely affect supply chain. It might not be in construction, but we're seeing already that in the food industry, where something happens in the northeast and then it falls down because then we don't get tomatoes, onions, or yams in Lagos. It's happening. So people must understand that now the ways to deal that, what are the alternatives that we have? One, locally, to ensure that we're as much as possible buffeted or protected from those eventualities. And you know, with supply chain instructions, there are timelines and there's cost. And they have to explore those ones and look, for our organization, cost is key. So if the only way we need to do cost is have another supplier or have 2 suppliers, or for some projects it's actually timeline. Timeline is much more important than money. Why? Because of the penalty clauses in your contract. So, like I said, it's very early stage to be able to, I won't say prevent, but protect, to take advantage of it or not. Mr. Ayoteriba clearly shared that. 7 years ago, 6 years ago, yes, you know, but the equity chain, Nigeria was not prepared and Nigeria lost out in that deal. That opportunity exists, is Nigeria taking advantage of it? The question there has always been, are we prepared? That's always been the ability to foresee and to prepare based on the reality of things that are already happening. So the one, like I said, I want to emphasize again, the first thing is with designers and planners, they need to create alternatives for those critical supplies that they are expecting. 2, they need to be able to, based on their analysis of it, create appropriate lead times and appropriate alternatives. 3, also to explore the possibility of local alternatives, and local alternatives or even alternatives in-house. You know, there are people now where a particular waste product from a particular construction progress becomes the input on another process. And then where we are collaborating, you know, and that's the critical thing that was said at the first panel, the collaboration. You see, the challenge we have is that there's always these construction companies or big ticket developers working in isolation. Reason being that what is scarce to you is surplus in another. The cement that you are expecting to be delivered, somebody has excess supply, right? And they are willing to sell it off. The iron rods that you're expecting, somebody has to buy. So if there is those kind of collaborations where we're creating the platforms and the forums where somebody is in excess of this and somebody is in deficit of it, and that's interaction. So it's us to create that platform, or better still, when we used to have, in the olden days, we used to have this government, we used to have control boards for supply of commodities like cocoa and blah, blah, blah. The question is that if government can create that platform, or private sector amongst themselves, because, you know, developers, constructions, they have associations, they can create those platforms. So where people, when I have something excess and I'm willing, well, I bought more than I expected, my engineers were good when they were constructing, I think they use less than we expect. What do I do? Do I wait for another contract and keep it in the storehouse and have warehouse cost, manpower cost to manage that? Who else wants to take 50,000 bags of cement and has excess? There may be people who, wow, I know, or I know, stuff like that. So we need to start to think innovatively about situations that
getting us out of the situation and circumstance we are as a country, getting us out of the challenges that we have as an industry. It needs one innovative thinking, fresh thinking, and collaboration. We cannot do it alone, and we must realize this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for that. 3 points I got from that: use of alternatives, flexibility, and local inclusivity. Thank you very much for that, sir. Our last question, because we'll be running up now, goes to Greg. Greg, are you still with us? Can you tell us which African markets are ahead of the curve? That's in the aspect of innovation, insofar as construction and design innovation is concerned, and what types of cutting-edge innovation are they adopting?
I think South Africa must be on the list. I think because one of the things about South Africans, I think, is that we are very interested in design, and we're very interested in technology. So those are two kind of very key strands, and I think they are manifesting in many different ways. There's wide acceptance of BIM here. There's in our practice, certainly, virtual reality is a core part of our design and our presentation processes now. I think there's also, we've also had a power crisis here, and that's starting to manifest in different technologies being incorporated into buildings, and I think in terms of recyclables and sustainability, that's also been taken quite seriously. And another country that's worth looking at is Rwanda, where we've done some work, and Rwanda is quite good at governance, and it's quite good at policy making, and I think they are being quite careful to kind of stay ahead of a number of things, one of which is sustainability. And there's this connection between industry, end users and specifiers, and government. So, for instance, I've seen some factories where people are making construction materials out of things like straw. Those are being used. I also know that, for instance, Rwanda's just built a new university or a new institute focused on agriculture, a big facility, and that actually absorbs carbon. Not only is it carbon neutral, it's carbon negative. It consumes more carbon than it produces, and that's because they've designed a building, and then they've gone and designed the whole supply chain. So all of the materials are local, all of the contractors are local, all of the consultants are local, etc., etc. So that's a project with a lot of government support and a lot of policy behind it, and a client pushing that as an agenda. But they'll benefit from it, because those technologies and methodologies will remain in the Rwandan economy, and that's a positive for Rwanda. At the end of the day, this does come back to bottom line. So people might be investing in new ideas and technologies now, but they're going to reap the rewards in the future, as we transition to this new economy. So yeah, I think Rwanda's worth looking at and thinking about. And maybe just a last point. I think as consultants we can also engage with industry more, and if somebody is making cement blocks, for instance, maybe they can. We can push them to think about using other materials to make blocks. I think we can influence industry, and we can get industry to manufacture stuff for our projects. So that's maybe something to think about.
Thank you very much, Greg, for that. I hope I'll attend a session like this, and when they ask this question, someone will say Nigeria. Well, it starts from here. It starts from you and me. And can we just give a round of applause to the various panelists? very insightful, and I think it's time for the audience for question and answers.
We are multi-family developers. My question is specifically about rental apartments at scale, and I think Greg might have the most experience on the stage in this aspect. Which African markets are sort of, you mentioned, who has the best innovation. Where are you building these products across Africa with sustainability in mind, or with some of these credentials, because it's still new and you need some track records to follow?
There's not much of it in Africa at the moment, to be honest with you. A lot of it, there's a lot in Far Eastern China. There's a little bit of interest in it in the Middle East. Well, more and more interest in the Middle East. Actually, I think people are becoming more conscious of it. In Africa, I think it's quite new, and I think, as I say, we're trying to rely more on kind of passive energy solutions rather than, say, particular material or construction solutions, because there just aren't many things available at the moment. So better engineering, it's in the kind of MEP areas that often I think they're quite fundamental things that can be done. But the last point on that, you asked where. I mean, Nigeria is the big market. Nigeria is where the big problem and the big opportunity and the big challenge is. You guys might not know this, but the United Nations reckons you're going to head up towards about 900 million people. So that's a big market.
Thank you, Greg, for that. Just one more question.
Good afternoon. My name is Chuka Harrison Okoye. I'm the CEO of Fastbo's Housing. We develop properties in Nigeria. I have one question. I believe you touched on it when you were mentioning about how the devaluation in Naira affects construction costs. But I don't think we really touched on. I just want to ask, how can the partners in the players in the industry, what can we do? What are the actionable steps we can take to combat this problem with the instability in the currency? What steps can we take to do that? Because, for example, there's sometimes you have investors who might want to, foreign investors, and they want to give you dollar, and you know that you're going to pay them back. But you're worried that by the time you want to pay them back, Naira has even devalued even more. So what steps can we take as players in this industry? Because it's one of the biggest challenges we have in the Nigerian business environment. Thank you.
From an operational point of view, is that we start the planning, or rather we finish the planning before we start the spending. That way, we're able to hold down prices. And especially, yes, because of devaluation, that's what we essentially do. So I mentioned one before. I said we do not take fixed price contracts anymore. If at all, at best we'll take partial fluctuation, but we do not take fully fixed price contracts anymore. So and that is based on understanding that we'll have with our clients, or the developer that we are working with. So what we do, we don't take that, so that means we share the risk. Because normally, as a developer, when you take the funds, you are taking that risk 100%. If you can have a conversation with your investor, fine and good. If the person is game, fine and good. But on your own part, operationally, the most important thing is to try and ensure that you have credible vendors, credible suppliers that actually have the end of they have the welfare of your project in mind. So you make down payments to hold down materials. I think that is at least a sure-proof way, because what normally happens is that we get the funds, it's sitting down in the account, we pay for what we need at the time, and then by the time we now come back, the prices have changed. If you're able to make a 40-50% payment to hold down 100%, I think that is that's a safe way for you to actually ensure that you're able to maintain the integrity of the dollars that you're receiving. Thank you.
Dollars.
and put it in the local currency with the way things are, and then convert from local currency back to US dollars, the position will move against you. So the best way to do is match with. So your investor rather pay you, pay your suppliers offshore. That way is dollar paying dollar. It's very important you do that because the currency moves to you. By the time it gets to you, before it moves to your supplier, you could have lost 5% of the value. So you need to be very, very astute about matching currency and ensuring that you are not using naira to pay dollar as much as you can. You can't eliminate that, but that needs to come into your planning going forward. That's my suggestion.